This is a Film Stories original podcast.
We made this.
Hello everyone and welcome to the Xcast. The truth is in here. My name is Kurt North and I am here with fellow showrunners Carl Sweeney and Sarah Blair. Sarah, it looks like you've got some scars there. What's going on? Have you been fighting?
Just call me Lulu.
Let's call you Lulu. Where's Betty? Carl, are you Betty?
I'm just sat over here with my bruised eye and, bloodied and bruised after Sarah took it out of me earlier before we recorded.
We are talking Fight Club. We shouldn't be talking Fight Club because the first rule of Fight Club is...
The first rule of Fight Club is do not watch the episode Fight Club of the X-Files. The second rule is definitely do not watch it. Or talk about it. But we're going to break the second.
Let's talk about the X-Files. How are you all doing, Sarah? How are things at the moment?
A bit bonkers. Yeah, it's good. A good kind of bonkers. I got a book coming out this week I'm very excited about. So, yay.
Yeah,
well done,
great.
Sarah.
Yeah, well done, well done. I know it's been a lot of hard work for you over the last few months, and
yes.
You've juggled this podcast as well, so congratulations, and hope it all goes well for you.
Thanks. By the time this
Great.
airs, it'll have been out for a while, so, it's all good, though.
And you've been recording commentaries on Hollywood AD as well, haven't you?
That's true, yes, with Annie and Russ. That was a fun time.
So that'll be on the Patreon, no doubt, at some point. So look out for that, guys. We are heading towards the end of season 7 here. Carl, how are you getting on? We're almost finished. So what are you thinking?
It's gone quickly again, hasn't it? Season 6 did, and this one has too. I just don't know where the months are going. It's really odd. Yeah, I'm all right. I'm quite busy at the moment. Really looking forward to this one though, because I think it's been a little while since we did a showrunner episode. Was it as far back as the amazing Marlene? It can't have been that long ago, can it?
Yeah.
It might have been, yeah. Potentially is that episode, yeah.
So far and yet so close. I don't know. It seems like some kind of magical thing that happened. Like, it seems like a long time ago, but,
I suppose we've done things like, Kurt, you and I were on Thief together, weren't we? So, but it has been quite a while since the three of us touched base.
Well, it's nice to see you both and to see us both together behind the scenes. We're going for a few drinks after the show. We're having an after show party tonight. Oh yeah, right, okay.
Right now.
You already started. I'm gonna go get my drink.
All right then, fair enough. Fair enough. Yeah, screw professionalism. Let's have a pint.
I mean, if any episode would allow us to abandon our sense of decorum, it's this one, isn't it?
Right, can is open. Right,
I gotta go downstairs. Can you wait for me for a second?
Yeah, we'll keep talking, Sarah. You go.
I'll be right back. Hang on.
Right, so while Sarah's away, because I don't think she'll want to hear you say this, but what are your general thoughts on our episode of Fight Club? But before we do that, It is season 7, episode 20, aired on the 7th of May 2000, and directed by Paul Shapiro and written by Chris Carter. What are your general thoughts, Carl?
Well, my general thoughts are that Chris Carter is an incredibly talented writer, isn't he? I mean, when you think about episodes like, I don't know what the first ones that come to your mind are, but I'm thinking Chris Carter scripts. I'm thinking like Anasazi, Paperclip, Dwayne Barry, many of us. He's wrote so many great episodes. It's really interesting that he's also wrote some absolutely appalling episodes, isn't it? And I think this has a strong claim to being the worst episode ever. I think there's a couple in this season that are up there or down there, I suppose, because we were talking about first person shooter, me and Sarah and Tony.
Yeah, I listened to that recently, so yeah, I'm aware of what your opinions are on that one.
Do you like that episode? Are you a first person shooter fan?
No, I was going to mention this, but I can mention it now. It is the worst episode of the X-Files ever for me. It's my worst episode. I hate it. I can't get through it.
I think there's a very strong case. I think this one is worse for me just because with first person shooter, I can sort of see how that concept could have been acceptable with tweaks. With this one, I can't. It's really baffling to me. I think it's actually quite a difficult episode to talk about. I'm glad that I'm with the two of you because it's so strange. It's like I really don't know what they were aiming for. I really don't know. In terms of a mark out of 10, I'm going to go for a 0.5 out of 10.
Right,
I mean, it gets half a mark because they delivered. An episode of the X-Files was due to go out on the air that week, and it went out at the allotted time. It ran for an hour. It did all the things except actually entertain. And
what did you get first person shooter again?
That was a 2.
Okay, we're gonna have to talk about this.
Go on, Sarah. What's your thoughts then?
It's quite good that on my screen, right? I'm in the middle of you two. So let's just carry on.
Well, first of all, cheers.
Cheers.
Kurt, did you already say your rating?
No.
No,
Not yet. No, I've just asked Carl what he thought of the episode, basically, because I didn't want to provide any sort of anger on your behalf. So
gotta keep it apart.
All right, we're gonna have to throw down about this then, because I'm gonna give it like a high 5.75.
Whoa.
For entertainment value, this episode makes me laugh. It's hilarious. It's completely batshit bonkers. I love it. It's so funny. It's very entertaining. It gets high points for me. Sorry, it's way more entertaining than first person shooter. If you could only take one episode to the desert island, the X-Cast desert island, Carl.
Yeah.
And you had to choose first person shooter or Fight Club. Come on now.
I'd rather be marooned on the island with no X-Files than take one of those two.
You could have just the one GIF file of Mulder going down the stairs pointing. That's about the best part of that episode.
Yeah.
That is the best part of that episode. But anyway.
Isn't it funny how the worst episodes sometimes provide the most memorable kind of memes and gifs? Yeah. No, I can't argue with you, Sarah. If you're laughing at this episode, I can't. There's nothing I can say to that because I have to take your word for that. I envy you. I envy you because I wish I could get that same level of enjoyment from it. The worst thing is, I know that this won't be the last time I ever watch this episode because I'm a bit of a completist. I know that there's going to be a point in the future, like 3 or 4 years from now, or whenever I do a full rewatch, and I just can't bring myself to skip it. So I'm kind of like, I should be done with this episode. There's no reason for me to ever watch it again, but I know it will happen at some point. That's what I'm concerned about.
Yeah. Okay, so it's my turn. I was actually quite surprised, Sarah, by your 5.75 score because my score is 5.5.
Yay! See?
So which Carl, if you remember rightly, what did I give Faith? I gave Faith a 4.
Oh, come on, mate. Faith is better than this. Come on.
I would much rather watch Fight Club than watch Faith. Faith was boring, and this has got at least something about it. I'm not saying this is the best episode of the world. I've been trying to work out where it is in my scheme. I'm doing a Cathy. I am starting a spreadsheet.
Oh, cool.
So I'm trying to work out what my best favorite episodes are and what the worst are. And this comes about 5th or 6th bottom around. So I'm not saying it's a fantastic episode by any chance. And my skewing is 6 out of 10 generally. So it is not a good episode of the X-Files. I'm not saying it is, but I can get through it and it's entertaining. Now, having said that, 2 episodes rewatch ago, I didn't get through the episode and I kind of went, I have to turn this off. But the last couple of times I've watched it, I've enjoyed it. So whereas the first person shooter, the last 2 times I've tried to watch it, I haven't got through it. So,
hang on a minute. So what episodes are below Fight Club on your rating then?
So bear in mind, this is a very early list, but I've got first person shooter, Lord of the Flies, Excelsis Day, Alpha, Jump the Shark, Tessos Suspicious. Now this is where it slightly changes because I'm not quite rated them yet, but down there is Christmas Carol, Tilico, William, Faith, Shooter Kill,
Carol,
Salvage, Improbable, Fearful Symmetry, Emily, Aguamala, Fight Club. Right. So, but that they're not rated yet. Yeah, I'm still kind of working out. So they're in a group which I'm going to move around. So, but it is, I would say, first person shooter, Lord of the Flies, Excelsis Day, Alpha, Jump the Shark, and Tessos Suspicious come up below Fight Club for me.
I mean, when you reel them off like that, it makes you realize how many really bad episodes this show did. I mean, the strike rate for the X-Files is pretty good, but when you isolate them like that, you realize there were some tough moments too.
I mean, out of 219, that's still pretty good. Not too shabby. I would have put the struggles in there.
No, I quite like the struggles. If I'm being honest, they're not the best episodes in the world, but they're still entertaining. So,
Eh,
but you're not a mythology person, Sarah.
yeah.
So, yeah, so I can imagine
True.
that why. Has anyone looked at IMDb? I know you looked at it in the, as I say, basically the reason why we keep talking about first person shooter is that this week is the week it got released to the Xcast. So you might well remember. Do you remember, Carl, what it was? Yes, you do. So Sarah, do you remember?
I think I do, yeah.
I do not remember.
Do you want to have a hazard a guess?
I think it was like an 8, right? Or 7? No, 7.
What world are you living in?
I don't know.
You're
6?
not in Kansas
Well,
anymore.
you can't. If it's on IMDb, it's not below a 6. Nothing's below a 6.
It's not below a 6. But
It's not below a 6. No.
Is it? It's just a 6.
It's a 6.1.
Okay.
Okay, then we've rambled on enough. Do you think should we look into Fight Club in more detail? And Carl, you can't answer. I've muted you. First off the bat, after giving a 5.75 and a 5.5, this opening, do not get this opening whatsoever. It is probably the worst part of the episode, in my opinion. Sarah, what do you think to this opening?
I'm gonna go to bat for Betty and Lulu and say that I really appreciate their bumper stickers. One of them was "Eat right, exercise, and die anyway," and the other one was cleverly disguised as a responsible adult. And I'm like, man, I feel that. Just we're all disguised as responsible adults here.
Yeah.
Like nobody knows how to adult. So I very much appreciated and identified with that. So right off the bat, I'm like, yes, I get this. Maybe that's why I enjoy this episode.
I mean, Carl, so one of the things that I find about this episode in general, right, is that it's very kind of whimsical and comic booky, and it's kind of ethereal out of like realism, you know, and I find it quite interesting that, and I'll come back to this, that Kansas is the city that's actually in. The fact that it's not in Kansas anymore, it's almost a reversal of that. You know, it's some of the things that happen, like going down the manhole and all that kind of thing. But but it's very whimsical. But it's like, what is that? There's a number of different aspects within the episode that kind of play to like sort of the duality that he's done in various episodes, the syzygy stuff as well. But then you've got like the Mulder and Scully doppelgangers, which have no relation to the episode whatsoever because they don't look like each other. I know it's Arlene Pledge and all that kind of thing. Why do that? And why would somebody who looks like, you know, Arlene Pledge does a really good job of being Scully, but it's like, I don't get it. So I don't understand. They don't look like Mulder and Scully, so it doesn't make any sense.
That doesn't make sense. You're right. And to go back to the teaser, I think what I don't like about it is the fact the way it's set up kind of calls attention to itself. You know, the way the shots are composed and that kind of thing. Because the way we see Lulu and Betty, where they're framed from behind, so we can't see the face and all of that. I just find that this episode kind of telegraphs what it's doing quite obviously. It does it with the fake Mulder and Scully as well, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's what I was trying to get to. Yeah, is the fact that it's blocked one way and then it comes up to. And it doesn't, and it's purely seems to be just for that reason.
And it's very forced and artificial, isn't it? Yeah. I think the music is very annoying, personally, in this episode.
The music is so weird in this episode.
It's very weird, isn't it? It's all, so the whole thing is just so overblown and quite hard to take. I think the teaser is a really bad teaser. I can't think of a worse X-Files teaser like off the top of my head. Maybe there is one. And what makes it worse, I think, is that in the opening minutes, it's quite repetitive, isn't it? Like within the first 6 minutes, we get 2 fight sequences, which are quite similar. Maybe if the first one had been skipped and we just started with the fake Mulder and Scully, that might have been slightly better. I mean, it's all relative because it still would have been terrible. But yeah, I don't know. It's my main issue is that the gags here, or the payoffs, are telegraphed really clearly and obviously.
It's very long. It's a very long teaser. But I like that they did David Duchovny and Gillian Anderson's voiceovers. And I'm going to keep saying the word ridiculous because everything about this episode is completely ridiculous. It is not a good episode. I agree. I just enjoy it more than other people, I think.
Okay, but can you pinpoint the moments, either in the teaser or in that fake Mulder and Scully scene. Which aspects are you laughing at? Where is the enjoyment come in?
Well,
how do you
okay.
experience it? Tell me.
I like the weird creepiness of the two guys on the bikes. How they like turn their heads the same way as like birds. They're like these creepy, weird bird dudes on these bikes, and they're going, and everybody has, we understand they're there to proselytize and share the message, and we know we're familiar with those, missionaries, and so the fact that they come up and do their thing and everything's completely normal. And then the weird part hits when they go to the next house, and somehow randomly they just wind up out of any house that they could randomly go to next. Instead of just going next door.
Yeah.
They just drive their bikes down the street to some other house somewhere. We don't know how far away they were, but that's the next house that they happened to go to. And it's Lulu's house, and she has the same stuff, and then they're like, oh my goodness, what? You're the same person. And then they just start fighting, and that's really weird and uncomfortable. Because like the creepiness with the blood on the thing, but then Mulder and Scully show up, or supposedly Mulder and Scully, and it's very mysterious for a minute. But then they start fighting, and I love it's hilarious when she gets in the car and then he like grabs onto the door and like and then you just hear the crash later.
It's very
It's hilarious. It's fun.
I think that's kind of the thing with it, what I was saying about how comic booky and out of realism, because it's there's the actual fight scene is clearly choreographed, but I think it's actually clearly done in that way because of that reason. And it's the same as you say, Carl, with the way they've blocked the shots for Kathy Griffin appearing behind, and you know who it is. Kathy Griffin at that point was fair, well known, and you hear that voice, you know who that is. But the fact that you've seen it twice is a bit like, right, well, why? That's an unusual way to do it, and it's purely to pay off the Mulder and Scully thing. So it's a bit. It just seems a bit strange. And the fight scene is, and you talk about the blood on the eye hole, the people, the way that's it. It's like that's clearly like designed as something that's been designed to like pop at the right time, but it's not done in a way that's like done for for a beat or anything. It's done because it looks like a stunt, and the whole thing, the whole actual Fight Club bit is like a stunt. I mean, even take the actual premise of the episode. It's about wrestling. Wrestling is exactly that. It's exactly that same thing. It's the design of like the way it does. And Sarah's right with the bit with the car, because he's getting in. It's like, yeah, they're showing they can do a stunt here, and it's clearly designed to do that. But I think what for me kind of affects it is that it doesn't really do enough to really make that clear that that's what they're doing, and it doesn't feel like it feels forced, rather than like, oh, I know what they're doing. I can clearly see what they're doing here, and it is rather strange.
Yeah, and why are the guys fresh out of the hospital with the two FBI agents? Like, they're still bloody and in their same clothes. I mean, can they just give them the address? I don't know. You would think.
Could Betty and Lulu have made greater effort to stay apart from one another?
Well, this was going to be a question, and I'd say we're not going scene by scene. The opening thing was just an opening gambit, but it's an interesting question that this whole episode is based around the fact that what are the chances of them meeting up? What are the chances of them wanting to eventually stay in Kansas? And there's a bit of a question about nature versus nurture, because they seem to be doing the same thing. Like, it's almost like predestined. And I wanted to get your thoughts on that, because it does feel like there's a commentary on, it's not necessarily the world around you that was shaped you. It's something that you was given to by birth. And that seems to be the way it seems to be. The coincidence kind of thing kind of kicks in. We can talk about Chris Carter all day, because you talk about things like improbable and, and syzygy, which is alluded to in this episode, and various different things, the doppelgangers things from like Plus One and on all the other episodes that he's done, Triangle and the Einstein and Miller stuff that he's just like keeps repeating. And obviously coincidence and consequence, it seems to be another thing that he's alluded to. So yeah, so what do you think to that, Carl, on the coincidence side, because or the nature versus nurture especially?
I really didn't come away from this episode thinking of it as a commentary on nature versus nurture. I didn't get that from it. This is another episode like when we talked about Thief and when I was talking about first person shooter, where I'm finding that a big problem is that Mulder and Scully's conversations aren't really up to par anymore. And I felt the same here. I mean, there is a fairly fun scene, isn't there, with them in the office? And I think that's the best part of the episode, right at the beginning.
Yeah.
I think that's much better than the two scenes that come before it. I do think it gets worse as it goes on, because it segues into Scully trying to guess what Mulder's withholding from her. And that started to test my patience. But in general, I don't think... Normally they use those characters to kind of outline the themes for us and to interrogate them a bit. And it didn't seem like much of that was going on here for me. I don't know what Chris Carter's interest is in like things like doppelgangers. I just think this is probably the worst kind of attempt that he made to develop that theme.
I mean, I do agree with that. This is the worst attempt, but it's still enjoyable. But yeah. I think it is interesting because those two FBI agents at the beginning, that's one thing that's never really clear about this episode. And I think you kind of just said that, Carl, but like nothing is really clear because Betty and Lulu share a father, and then the two Berts, we don't ever get the other Bert's name. We get Bert's the Panic, and then his non-fraternal sibling. Yeah. Which we don't. I looked it up and tried to figure out if that meant twins or not. Maybe she means non-twins, but they're still. I don't know. Anyways, and so they're not related, but they look exactly the same. And then we've got the Mulder and Scully doubles, and it's all very confusing. There's not really any like world building or rules here.
They should look like Mulder and Scully, shouldn't they?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like judging by the fact that Kathy Griffin's got a double, Bert Zupanic's got a double.
But is that just to say like, hey, everybody has a double out there somewhere, or everybody has someone who is so similar to them out there? Maybe. I don't know, but not everybody has this weird thing where they just make people angry when they're together.
Can I pick up on something Kurt said earlier? So you said, Kurt, about how everybody is familiar with Kathy Griffin. So I realized I haven't seen a great deal of her stuff, to be honest. I've mainly seen this episode. Yeah. An episode of Seinfeld she was in, which is also a really bad episode of Seinfeld, from what I remember. She's like the curse when she turns up. And I remember she appears very briefly in Pulp Fiction. I think it's the scene with Bruce Willis when he collides with Ving Rhames in the car. She's like the bystander. She has like one or two lines. Yeah. But I was looking down the list of credits and I don't think I've seen much else, if anything. But Sarah, you're a fan of hers, aren't you?
Yes.
What is she famous for? Like, what's she good at?
I liked her before she was on the X-Files. I saw her on the X-Files, and she was one of the first, celebrities that I felt like I already knew who had appeared on the X-Files, because it seems like most everybody, except maybe Seth Green, I saw first on the X-Files and then on other things. Famous. But it was a little bit different with her. And then she got the show Life on the D-List. And I specifically watched it because she was on the X-Files. And I was like, yeah, Kathy Griffin, she's on the X-Files. So I started watching that show. And I really enjoyed it.
So what was this, like a reality show?
Yes, it's a reality show. And I just really enjoyed that she was this real person trying to just do her best and work her butt off and make it. And just make a name for herself. And it really showed kind of the behind the scenes stuff of just how much work Hollywood actually is, and how hard it is to actually do it. And I really appreciated that and enjoyed watching that journey, because I mean, she is really, really crass, but she does have a very particular sense of humor. But it was nice to be able to see the behind the scenes journey and kind of see just that she's really doing her best to live the life she wants, So
yeah, I haven't seen any of her stand-up comedy or anything. Kurt, how much do you know about her?
Well, I don't know that much about her. I just remember at the time that she was around. I'd seen a couple of stand-ups, or it was on the TV or something like that. It was more that she seemed to be, stuff like the Saturday Night Live stuff, which I know we don't get, and Sarah often sends us clips and we don't get it, but that's another story. But the Saturday Night Live, the comedians on there that sometimes would spill over it, and you would hear about that or see that in UK TV. So that's the only way that I kind of knew who she was, and I knew she was a stand-up. That's about all I knew when I just saw this episode.
So, do you guys actually like her performance in this episode? Because I find her really irritating. No, I mean, that's all I can say. Like, do you actually think she's given a good, is it effective casting?
Remember, I'm the host. You just get back in your place, sir. There's been question marks on does she differentiate between the two characters? How far can you push that because of the nature of them being mistaken for the same person? Now, I actually have been with a twin. I know twins at my workplace. So it's one of those things where sometimes it can be a bit difficult to go, unless you've known them for a long time. But I think it's a difficult balance to get. I don't mind her as a general performance, as in like what she's doing. I think there could have been more differential between the two. I think it needs to be a little more nuanced. But there's a fine line between going too far and being too distanced. It's not the greatest, acting I've ever seen. It's not the best thing. She does the job, basically, for me. That's the way I see it. What about you, Sarah?
I thought she did fine. I mean, it's not exactly an episode that you're gonna have to dig deep for. It's not any kind of like seriously emotional anything. I mean, she showed up and she did her job that she was hired to do. So I think she accomplished that. And there were a few spots where I noticed she pronounced things differently. She pronounced a word maybe a little bit differently, or used different emphasis here and there. I mean, I would imagine that it would be difficult as an actor to have to deliver the exact same lines, but in a different order, in a different way, because knowing me, I would get mixed up. I don't know about anybody else, but that would be hard for me personally. I feel like she did a great job, mixing things up a little bit and being able to deliver. I think, she did her job that she was hired to do. So it didn't really bother me one way or the other.
So, Carl, what you've given your opinion on Kathy Griffin. What about Randall Cobb as Bert? What do you think to his performance?
I actually liked him much more. I don't think, I'm not going to come here and say it was a great guest performance, but I think he was solid. He didn't bother me like Griffin did, or particularly the actor who played her father. He screams every single line at the top of his lungs. Actually, I don't think that's his fault. I read some trivia. You're probably going to bring this up, but that actor who played the father, apparently he whispered during the rehearsals because the director was saying you've got to scream it at the top of your lungs, and he was like, "Well, I can't keep doing that." So he just
going to get a headache.
Going to get a headache. Bert Supanik I found tolerable. Yeah, I think with Griffin, I'll confess there were a couple of scenes where I wasn't sure which one I was looking at. Was it Griffin 1 or was it Griffin 2? Was it Betty or was it Lulu? And I just couldn't be bothered to watch the episode again. Guys, honestly, I thought I'd go back a second time and figure it all out, but it's not worth it. I'm not sure if that's her to blame though, because I think it may have been that she was asked not to differentiate the characters. So if we can't necessarily lay it all at her door.
I mean, you couldn't remember which color was which. They each had a color. One was blue and one was pink.
Red, yeah.
Obviously. Yeah.
Yeah,
clearly. So easy, Carl.
And there was one that was a bit angry, and there was one that's just slightly more mellow. That was basically, and they have the bumper stickers the wrong way around. Just
exactly, and like inverted colors. Totally, yeah, it's totally easy to.
Well, that's the thing, isn't it? Because we get these like repeated scenes, don't we? Mm-hmm. 2 scenes in the copy shop, 2 fights right at the beginning of the episode. That bar like explodes twice, or whatever it was. All the glasses shattering and all of that.
Well, I'm just about to say this. We're having that drink afterwards. I'm going to start like sort of producing like a pyramid of glasses just to see see what happens over the course of the night, how many I can smash. Yeah, I mean, the repetitive humor for me it's something I've always enjoyed. I love the rake in the Simpsons. It's the funniest things ever. But Homer falling down the cliff like several times, all that stuff is great. But there's no pacing. There's no on this. It's like, let's repeat that scene rather than let's run it again. Let's have a slightly different take on it, or let the repetitiveness affect something, and it doesn't really do that. So I find myself like in a degree of like not finding the episode funny as Sarah does, but kind of like, well, all right, okay, yeah, and just finding it entertaining.
Did you also feel like there were big chunks missing with Mulder and Scully? Like, for instance, there's a scene where Mulder's watching Bert Zupanik leave the building, I think, go into the elevator or something, and then he goes to like try and get into his apartment, it looks like. And then the very next time we see him, he's sat with the wrestling manager, and apparently they're good buddies. And it's like, well, what happened? What happened in between what we just saw?
We need some filler to figure out how this happened. It's so random.
Yeah, and also, what the fuck, right? What the fuck did he do when he was down in that sewer for like half a day or whatever it was? Because
we have to talk about the sewer. Oh my gosh!
I know you're literally just taking over, Carl. It's great.
Sorry, man.
I'll fight you. It's getting ridiculous, man.
Sorry for the swearing as well.
What? Yeah, well,
No, that was valid because I had the exact same notes.
I've got the same notes. So my question is that trying to be like Small Potatoes? Is that meant to be the kind of thing that he's playing towards? That he's seen Darren Morgan do like him being stuck in somewhere, and that's him for the rest of the actual episode. Is that what it's about? I mean, I love the way he comes out the manhole and like kind of does a giraffe kind of like
middle thing. Like just how long was Mulder in there running? And
hours and hours.
Why doesn't he just go back up?
That's what I mean.
What is he doing?
He just get himself out there,
I tell you why, because he's not in Kansas anymore. Right. It's like a total reverse of the Wizard of Oz, isn't it? Basically, he's because everything goes backwards as well.
How is it reverse of the Wizard of Oz? I don't remember Dorothy coming out of the storm drain.
No.
That would be a reversal.
Yeah. Well, you're not in Kansas anymore because you're going to the wonderful Wizard of Oz, aren't you? With Mulder, he's going into the underearth of like the sewers of Kansas. So he is very much in Kansas, isn't he?
Do we take it as a passive aggressive or an aggressive swipe at the Coveney from this episode's writer, perhaps?
See, that's what I was coming to next, actually, the lawsuit, because that was going to be one of my early things. So I think we have to talk about the lawsuit. I just thought I'd get in there first. I just thought I'd bring it up first. It's okay. I'm just, and by the way, you haven't got my notes, but fair enough. What part of this do we think, Carl, because you brought it up, do you think alludes to this lawsuit? Because they've said on multiple interviews, like the Coveney said that he acted professional, he did what he needed to do, he just read his line and did it. And we talk about one of the best scenes in the episode, and I actually think that the stuff where Mulder's holding back information from Scully is a trait that for some reason that I do all the time. I kind of have that trait of doing that to people. That is a really well acted scene. It's one of the best acted scenes that he's done for, in season 7 in some ways, because it's really nicely played. So he's still being professional about this. And this episode is, as I say, as you said, that the lawsuit's obviously getting at its peak here. There has been aspersions cast that this is part of the reason why Chris Carter wrote this. So what are you actually alluding to there?
Well, it's funny, isn't it? Because we've been talking about this lawsuit all season. Because I think it was first brought up potentially when I was talking to Tony about Pacific Extinction 2. Obviously, it's still unresolved as they're making this episode, I believe. I really don't know if the intention of this episode is that Chris Carter is like drawing on that in this story. I've heard it read that way, though. I've heard it read that because we've got a story here about two people who can't be in the same location as one another without all manner of chaos breaking loose. That's been read as, kind of a submerged biographical thing where that is really referring to Carter and Duchovny. I just don't know if that's the intent, because I really don't know what the intent is with this episode in any way, shape, or form. I just don't know what's going on. It could be that. Sarah, what do you think? Do you get that vibe from it?
I mean, it didn't occur to me when I was first watching it, but I can see it in retrospect. I think it is interesting that he gets sidelined. And then whenever he does get back in touch with Scully, she doesn't even. He's like, I just spent all day in the sewer, and she's like, okay, but what about this? And just completely glosses over it, and so it's hard to comment on all of that drama because I'm, whenever shows do drama like that, it just is not interesting to me at all. I just want to see my show that I like and hope that it all works out. So I try not to really think about it that much, to be honest.
I wonder if there's a chance it's coming out unconsciously, because I think I had read that this script was written while Carter was working on something else.
The Wollongong pilot he was working on, yeah. So there was quite a lot going on. I think Frank Spotnitz had said something along the lines of like it was all over the place. The actual script itself was a bit like, whoa, what's like going on here? Yeah, a bit out there, yeah.
So it makes you wonder if like this is just one he's like forced himself to get something out there on paper, and has that revealed subconsciously what he was really thinking about. I don't know. I mean, the thing, sometimes when you know what the author of a script is intending, that can kind of enrich your experience of it. But even if that was the case, I'd still really find this episode a problem, I think.
There's elements to it where I think that you're right, that it might be coming out subconsciously, but there's also things like he's always said that it's Mulder and Scully, that he wouldn't do it without Duchovny, that there's the contract negotiations at that point, that he might have been a bit bruised with Duchovny's reaction, and this is not me defending anyone, this is just what maybe potentially might have happened, is that Duchovny felt that Chris Carter didn't really back him up, but was he self-aware of that at the time? And has it just been circumstantial that things have happened the way that they did? And, obviously they've made up since and whatever. And it's one of those like miscommunication things. And because he's saying that one of the things it says, the anonymous source noted that the whole lawsuit thing revealed Chris Carter knew David Duchovny was being screwed over. Now, did he know or did he not know? We don't know that. We don't know what the behind the scenes are with that. But in part of Fight Club, what you could read is that, you've got the doppelgangers at the beginning and it's not the X-Files. It's like it's the third from last episode, isn't it? Because Sweat and Requiem next.
Yeah.
It's the third last episode. There's callbacks to Scully saying that's why they put the I in the FBI, and Scully coming to the point of like saying things like psychic. She's come full circle. She's actually saying these things overtly. I think it's this. I think it's that. It could be this, and and obviously we'll talk about the ending shortly. So there's a lot going on with the surface of this, and I feel that this does feel like you said, he was doing the pilot as well for Longum, and I don't think they knew at this point that the show was going to continue into an 8th season. They didn't know what was happening with Duchovny, and it feels to me very much like, let's throw something on paper, let's get this episode out and let's get it done. And and we need that, and I hate to say this word, filler kind of episode, because we need to get something on there. And let's have it like almost like a second penultimate episode in some ways.
Because I know you guys like this episode more than I do, but you'd agree, I hope, that if this had been the last season of the show, and this had been, this could have been potentially one of the very last episodes of the entire series, it's not really fitting as that, is it? It's not good enough. It's not good enough for that slot. So I mean, I'm glad it wasn't ultimately. But
yeah.
It is interesting, like you say, the quote from Scully, which goes all the way back, doesn't it, to the original days of the show. I guess that's why they put the I in the FBI. And yeah. But even so, it's not good enough for that slot.
No. And during that scene, I don't know, we briefly talked about that scene. It's the way that that's filmed, that the elevator's closed, and the way that Mulder looks to the right and then sort of runs off. It feels quite whimsical and quite comedic, but I don't know if it's the editing or the terrible music choices that they do, that it just doesn't seem to really hit. And that's the thing. It seems like it wants to be funny, and it's funny to a degree, but it just doesn't seem to formulate. And it seems like the ideas have just been stuffed into a bag and gone, right, okay, let's get this doppelganger thing. Let's have this. The nature versus nature thing, I'm reaching there, but I'm just thinking more for the fact of what he's saying is that it's like you can have two similar people, and that he's talking about the Duchovny Carter thing maybe.
Oh, yeah.
But to the two similar people that are destined to like come back around and be in the same position, and the fact that Kathy Griffin's character and both Kathy Griffin's characters are not saying or getting angry with each other, in that way. It's manifested in another way because they're not going to express that. It feels to me that's more potentially where he's coming from. It's more like we needed to get things out in the open, and we're not, and it's not, and it's manifesting in other ways.
That is an interesting take, actually, because I think I must have heard, I think it was Chris Knowles talking about it. Yeah, I think it was when he was talking to me and Darren about closure. And he had mentioned how Carter and Fox Mulder, or Duchovny, were quite similar, similarly like laconic and calm and things. So now that you mention that, that's quite an interesting take on it, that it's the external manifestation rather than the fact that they're like getting, volatile directly to one another.
Yeah.
I can see that potentially. Yeah. I'm convinced.
Okay, I have a question for you guys. So we've got Hollywood AD, Fight Club, and Just Sweat all in a row. And they're all more whimsical than the darker, gritty mythology episodes. But they all kind of have like this tone to them. And clearly Fight Club is the worst of the three. But it is interesting that it's sandwiched between these two episodes. And then we've got Just Sweat that is just fantastic. And it just doesn't really compare, right? Like, what do you think about having those three lighter episodes all in a row like that towards the end? This is the end of the season.
I love Just Sweat. I think that's a great, really good episode. So in terms of the run of them, I like Hollywood AD as well. So I think it's just this one that's the problem. I think if this one in an ideal world could have been a really good darker episode, something like if Carter was going to do his doppelganger story, but he made it similar to Plus One, which he would do many years later and put it in this slot, that could have been a nice contrast with what's around it potentially. I think, maybe it is pushing it a bit, but the series is winding down, and you probably would have liked another spooky standalone, I suppose, in here somewhere, wouldn't you, Kurt? I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just thinking that back to, like, if you think just before Hollywood AD as well, you've got Brand X. Yeah. So Brand X has that dark aspect to it. It's got the conspiracy of the corporation, and you've got some of the mythology things which Skinner kind of gets involved in. You can see those back 4 episodes of what they're trying to do is like, this is almost like a final, victory lap as such. Hollywood AD, obviously Duchovny, Hollywood AD is a full thing. Just Sweat, I agree. I think it's a fantastic episode. And you've got Requiem, which obviously has that issue of like, is it a finale? Is it not? What's going to happen with that? But I think it's a good back end to the season. Obviously, the Fight Club is the outlier, but you can see I think you see this in many TV shows when it's coming to the towards the end of its life, that you'll get this kind of run. It's kind of like, well, what else is there to do, or what else can we perceive to do? So I think that's interesting from that point of view. And yeah, it would have been nice for this to be, more solid than a more of a comedic episode than it actually is. But it does feel that there's like, it's almost like a one big blowout for Carter, and that's probably the way to read it, I think.
Or maybe not even a blowout, but like, from what we're hearing, it's like he was a bit down to the wire on the script and things like that. So it wasn't that calculated, was it, from the sounds of it?
No.
But yeah, did you guys recognize? Because when we get to wrestling, sorry to.
Sorry, no, carry on.
No, one thing I noticed, and I'd forgotten it. The guy in the ring with Zupanik, Rob Van Dam, he was actually a real wrestler, wasn't he? I used to watch wrestling back in this sort of era, and I remember him. He was a bit of a, he was quite acrobatic and things, and jumping off ladders and that kind of thing. Right. And yeah,
I've probably gone beyond that. I'm slightly older than you, Carl. So
you're more like Hulk Hogan and Andre the Giant and those people.
Bret the Hitman Hart and the Undertaker. Even the Undertaker's still going.
Yeah. No, I think he's retired now.
No, is he retired now?
Last year, I think it was.
Yeah, Kurt, I'm with you. I recognize all those names, but I don't know who the other guy is. I have a question. Yeah. How the heck does Saperstein get to the FBI? And what is he doing there? Just hanging out with Mulder and Scully in the FBI building. Like, what the heck? Why is he there?
I'm wondering, who was he supposed to represent? Because
what is the point?
I found it odd at the beginning when he was suddenly best buddies with Mulder, and like you say, at the end. And it's
are they just BFFs now? And he's like, hey, come on out to DC and we'll like show you around, Saperstein.
He's an interesting character, though, isn't he? Because he's
hilarious. I love him, but
he's taken the money. I mean, we need to talk about that. I think we need to talk about just how relaxing nature. Like, obviously, Scully's going off and doing all these adventures, which often gets told. We often get told that all Scully does is like sit doing the autopsies.
She solved this case.
He does turn around and say, "Maybe I should start doing the autopsies." Well, I thought was I love that line. I think that was great. He's he's kind of like the Don King of the wrestling world in this episode, isn't he? Really, but he's an interesting character, and actually probably the most out of the really kind of bizarre stuff that happens in the episode is probably the most real character that we have in the entire episode itself.
Yeah, and that actor was fine. I thought again, I didn't mind the actor playing Zupanic. I didn't mind the actor playing him either. So yeah, he was okay. I find it quite inexplicable, like Sarah is saying. I didn't really understand his function, but the actor was good.
Yeah, well, he's in Die Hard 2. He's Barnes in Die Hard 2.
There we go.
It bugged me up because me and Sarah watched it together, and I was like, and Sarah's like, "Oh, I love Sabatini, he's great," and I'm like, "All right, okay, yeah." I was like, "Where do I know him from? What film do I know him from?" So I had to go and search for it. But yeah, he's Barnes in Die Hard 2. Yeah, so I thought he did really well. But yeah, as you say, it's a standing character. That almost like his X-Files trope, isn't it? Of like kind of bringing the person to the FBI kind of thing. But
yeah,
it's like how does he do that? And he's a bit of a dodgy character, is Saperstein, isn't he? He's
but like, why would they bring him? Because he wasn't like the subject of the case or anything, was it? He just bumped into him as they went along.
Maybe he used all that fake money and just came along with them. It's like, hey, I'm gonna I don't know.
The fake money that she copied at one point.
The fake money that she copied on the Cocos, not Kinkos. I come from the land of Kinkos.
All right.
Pardon me.
Yeah, it's a chain, apparently. That's what I found out, Kalia. I got educated the other night.
You walk into a Kinko's and it smells amazing and it's warm and cozy from all the copy machines running. Oh, Kinko's, man. Good memories.
That actually was one of the better moments in the episode when Scully was in there and she was talking to the manager and then she was like, "You have internet access?"
Yeah.
Oh, that's yeah.
It's like back in the day before everybody had internet, you just go to Kinko's and use the internet. It's amazing. And make copies while you're there.
Are they out of business now, are they?
Yeah.
Yeah, no need for them.
No need for copies because everybody's got a printer now. It was before the days when everybody had a printer and because you could get like the black and white regular printers, but nobody had inkjet. Really, you just go and you get your little copy card and you put it in, and then it would count how many copies, and then you take it up to the desk and pay at the end. And you could pick out whatever paper you wanted to copy on. They had so much paper, all colors, just so many colors of the rainbow. It was beautiful.
Amazing.
It was like a magical place. I loved Kinko's so much.
And I just went. Yeah, I used to get my photocopying done at the library.
You could fax things. If you needed a fax machine, you go to Kinko's. You need some copies, you go to Kinko's.
I have never needed
to send
a fax
email.
Machine,
Kinko's. They had you covered, man. It was amazing. You could get a banner or poster made at Kinko's.
Wow.
Yeah.
Bring back Kinko's.
One-stop copy shop. Anything you need, Kinko's got it, man.
I have a question. Why does Scully take Zupanic to the wrestling? What on earth was she
isn't he on death row? Isn't he a death row inmate? What are they doing? Yeah, of course. Sure, take him to this wrestling match. No problem.
Yeah, you just play it safe,
death
wouldn't
row
you?
Inmate.
You'd think the last time I came across a doppelganger, it all didn't go very well. So
then she was smug about it as well. She's there smiling away. She's like, "Look at me, Mulder. Look at me. Yeah. I'm now the queen of the X-Files. I know everything." Oh crap!
It was amazing. I love that scene.
Yeah, it is great.
Look at me. I did it. And you were in the sewer the whole time.
There was loads going on in that scene before that, wasn't there? Like Mulder carrying Betty away and then she's like clinging onto the corner of the ring and oh my God, it was just so...
Oh, hi, baby.
Terrible.
I like that line. I did like that line.
The audience starts attacking each other, don't they? And then it looks like we're going to get a happy ending with Zupanic. And then
nope.
Goes wrong again.
Apparently, the extras got a bit overzealous with the fight scenes. Apparently, they had to calm them down. So, which is fantastic.
Do you think? I'll ask a question. Do you think this episode would have been better if Chris Carter himself had directed it? Because this is is it Paul Shapiro? Is that who it is?
Yeah.
And I just wonder, and I'm just basing this off like one or two little things I've read, like the fact that that actor playing Mr. Danfoos was told to scream at the top of his lungs. I'm wondering if the director saw this script, didn't really know what approach to take with it, and landed on, set up the gags really obviously, make the performances pretty big. And I'm wondering if Carter or if somebody else had handled it, could it have been done differently in a way that would have made it like a 7 out of 10 for you guys? Or do you know what I mean? Could it have been better?
No, yeah, it's like kind of retool, re-edit. Again, it goes back to what I said before about the repetitiveness of the episode. It's kind of like the gags should the going back into the bar. You should be going, oh no, what are you doing that for? Like we've done at the end this episode, where Scully is coming down with him. And like, Scully, what the hell are you doing? It should be that kind of moment. It should be more of that. But it just felt like, oh, we're back in the bar.
Well,
that's going to happen again.
I felt bad for the bar staff that they like cleaned everything up, set everything up all nice again. Since the last night.
But I think the editing would have done better for that because the humor is in exactly what you've just said. It's the humor is of the guy behind the bar
just finished
finishing his top one, and then it happens. But it doesn't play like that. It plays more wide angle shots and it plays more straight, like what we said at the beginning with the way the cameras are laid out. It's very kind of, it's very kind of the scene set
and stilted.
Yeah.
It's really boxy. You know what I mean? Like it's just all straight up. Yeah.
And it maybe it's a financial thing. We're getting Requiem soon, but maybe it's a financial thing where they had to hit budget, that you can't have that nuance of the what we would call Steadicam, if Steadicam was at the time, or setting up a 2-shot or 3-shot depending on what you needed to do for it. Because the actual explosion in the fight in the Froggy's bar actually is quite effective. It's quite a big explosion scene. But it just would have been it would have been better to underplay that and have a closer in shot with the barman, and that's the joke, and that should have been the joke, and it wasn't. It was more like, oh, we're now getting the syzygy. Let's shut them in a room together kind of aspect, and it didn't really work. So I think that for me is probably where it's gone wrong. And I think Chris Carter could have done a better job.
Although First Person Shooter was directed by Chris Carter. And that has similar issues in terms of having quite an aggressive or kind of an ungainly style to it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Do you think they were just in a rush at the end of the season?
Tired.
Phoning it in.
Like the three of us today.
Yeah, we're just phoning. The reason why there's no real host on this episode is because no one's been really bothered to write a coherent script.
Take any notes whatsoever.
Yeah. We just got one word. Like I've got "We are in Kansas." That's all I've got, basically.
I've just got Kinkos. Written down in big letters. That's it. Kinkos.
I just got shite.
Why did she call them boys at the beginning? Those boys. They were not boys. They were men. At the beginning, it was the pink one. Lulu was pink, right? Or Betty?
See, you can't keep them apart, Sarah, either. See? It wasn't just me.
I've been drinking.
Who was she calling boys? The two
missionaries.
I don't know.
She's like, those boys? You mean those boys? Are they hurt?
Because they were just clean-cut young men, I assume.
I suppose. They did not look like boys.
But that was the thing. They went to did they go to the scene where they actually had the fight?
No.
Because she didn't. So why did not go to the scene where they actually had the fight? Because it doesn't make any sense. You'd go back to the scene where the fight.
No,
happened.
they did. Did they?
No,
I can't remember. No,
because she saw them fight and turned around and was like, oh no.
Mm-hmm.
And then when we come back to it, it's like, oh, those boys, because it's the other one, whichever one the other one was. Yes, Carl, I didn't pay attention either. Yeah, so that doesn't make any sense. Anyway, what can you do? What can you do? Again, I've got like repeated scenes, repetitive comic book surreal, not viewed through a realistic lens, which seems like it's out of the X-Files world for me.
But although is it a bit more, because it seemed like Mulder and Scully themselves were pretty legitimately beaten up at the end, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Compared to the cartoonish stuff at the beginning with the fake Mulder and Scully. But again, that scene bothered me just in terms of it's really obvious what's coming, isn't it? Because we hear Scully, we see the projector and all that stuff. So it's really obvious that she's being kept off screen for that reason, because it's going to come around and she's going to be, going to have been beaten up in the fight. So
How come Mr. Saperstein got out of all of the fighting? Did he just run away? Probably. He knew what was up. He had to get out of there.
I don't know.
He took the money and ran.
Exactly.
Sorry, he took the paper and ran. I did have another note which says Sarah loves this episode so much she talks about it on a podcast twice. She did the pod watch.
Oh, right.
Clara.
Yep.
Right.
Because nobody else wanted to. Nobody else wanted Fight Club. I'll take it. It's fine.
Clara didn't like it, surely, from what I remember. I think she didn't like it.
No, she did not like it. I think there's a moment where she actually howls with laughter when she finds out that Sarah likes the episode.
That's been a minute. We'll have to go listen to that again.
You do say in that episode, though, by the way, and I know this is like a primer to the episode next season. You actually say, I've put my question is, do you stand by your comment that you would watch this over anything in season 8?
Oh, anything in season 8?
That's what you said.
No.
Are you sure? There's nothing in season 8 you wouldn't watch?
No, I would watch. I like the ones with
like
which one right? What are the first two with Skinner and his sleeves rolled up?
I wasn't watching for that, but I mean, within and without, does he?
Yeah. I'll watch those two over this because I want to see Skinner with the sleeves rolled up.
Skinner and sleeves.
Skinner's in a lot of season 8.
Yeah, if Skinner has his sleeves rolled up, I'll watch that over this. I'll take it.
And I did say another note that I put in, which will be my final thing before we ask you for your final thoughts, is if we only had recorded our foulest minute Fight Club episode.
I mean, Diana Fowley would have made this episode better, wouldn't she?
It was me and Sarah, what happened behind the scenes between me and Sarah and that Fight Club moments.
It was very similar, actually, wasn't it? Yeah.
Very similar. Very similar. Yeah, it had hallmarks of what happened with Carter and Duchovny.
But we can't talk about that because the lawsuit is still pending.
But we can still say that it was Blair versus North. That's all we can say. And it set a precedent.
Wonderful healer, so it's fine.
It set a precedent. That's all it is, isn't it? And the court case is closed.
Yeah.
Okay. So final thoughts, Carl. What do you think? Crap.
This is really bad. This is the worst episode ever. Is it the worst episode ever?
No.
I think it is, because I can't see really how this could have been redeemed. Like I said, with first person shooter, was it ever going to be a great episode? No. Could it have been much better with certain tweaks? Yes. Early episodes that go really badly wrong, like Excelsis Day or Tesso Dos Pitjos, I respect them slightly more in the sense that at least they're kind of trying to be eerie, spooky stories, and it's early enough in the show's run that you can not forgive, but you can sort of understand why things go wrong. When it's this late in the show's run, they know what kind of stories they can tell. I just don't understand how this one happened. I don't understand how we got this episode. And
Lord of the Flies?
I mean, that's not a good episode. That's got a good joke about the Fox network in it. That's the only thing. That's actually got a surprisingly good cast, isn't it? Because you've got a couple of before they were famous in there. That's not good. I mean, I don't know. Our Fight Club is right down the bottom for me.
Sarah, final thoughts on this episode?
Not at the bottom. There's a lot of episodes I dislike more than this episode. It's not a good episode, but it's not the worst. Also, we didn't mention the quote, I Yankee doodled into a plastic cup.
Oh, yeah. I do laugh at that.
That's a hilarious line.
And I actually do like the way that Scully has to kind of hold back, and the way she delivers the lines I thought was really, really effective, actually. I think we did it. It was really kind of nice. I thought that was good, the way she delivered those lines.
I didn't like that. I didn't like her performance in that scene.
I thought it was interesting. What? I was wondering if she was doing that because there was some kind of reverse effect, because he was the angriest person in the world. So anything would be less no matter what, no matter how angry you are, you would be less angry than him. And does being around him have the opposite effect of being around Lulu and Betty? Does it make you more cheerful, more happy, less angry?
I don't know. I didn't get that. But do you guys agree with me that he was just really bad? The way he delivered his lines, that guy, Mr. Damfus. Did that really annoy you? Or was it just me?
No, I thought it was hilarious.
Yeah, I didn't find it that
It was ridiculous. But
bad. No, I thought it was all
it
right.
didn't bother me.
Okay, here's the question. Because my litmus test is like, would I feel embarrassed to show this episode to my partner? Like we've done a rewatch of the X-Files, or I should say, when I showed her the X-Files for the first time, and we did a fairly full-on rewatch with some skipping. And I remember the first time I was embarrassed to be watching the show with her was when we got to Dreamland 1. Right? When that mirror scene came up, I was just like, oh, I'd forgot about this. Oh my god.
One of the best moments in X-Files history.
No.
Almost just spit my drink all over my computer.
Sorry,
Thanks,
Sarah.
Carl.
But
I need a drink after that.
When I say to you, I
Good
can't.
night.
When I say to you, I can't argue that you laughed at this episode. It should apply in reverse. You can't argue with me that I feel embarrassed watching Dreamland. All right, it's just the way it is.
The whole episode or
I feel
just that
embarrassed
one
for you.
scene? Can you just if you extract that scene from the whole episode and just pretend it's not in there, the rest of the episode, are you embarrassed?
That is the main problem. Yeah, the other stuff around it is.
It's
just that one scene mainly.
Okay.
I'm not sure if we watched Fight Club together, but I know I'd have the same feeling watching Fight Club. I know I'd be like embarrassed because I'm kind of the spokesman for the series in a way, because I'm like bigging it up. Like, this is the greatest thing ever. You got to watch it. Something like this would embarrass me. Kurt, would it embarrass you to sit down with Marie and say, look, this is Fight Club?
No, because I wouldn't approach it that way. I would approach it that X-Files is my favorite show. Do you fancy watching an episode? I don't approach it as like I want to get her to like watch it. She knows she likes the show. She enjoys the show, and
it's nicer when they like it though.
Yeah, and there's no gore in it, so I think she'll be all right.
Okay. Fine.
No, it's not. Roadrunners. She definitely wouldn't. I wouldn't put that on her because she wouldn't want to see it. This one I probably would.
Thank you.
Because there's nothing really there.
No, James and I used to watch Life on the D-List together, so I don't think he'd mind it too much.
Okay, maybe I'll have to go and watch Fight Club with Becky, and I'll report back and tell you how it went down. Maybe I'll be surprised. You know?
But just to mention, Dreamland is like in my top 5 favorite episodes. So
no, I know. Yeah, I just honestly, it makes me blush watching it because like I'm thinking like this is so bad.
Well,
just that scene though, not the whole
mainly
episode.
Mainly that scene.
Okay.
Going back to my top 5, my top 5 probably has Anasazi, written by Chris Carter. Paperclip, written by Chris Carter. Dwayne Barry, written by Chris Carter. One Breath.
Not written by Chris Carter.
Not written by Chris Carter. And Jose Chunks from Outer Space, which is the top.
Also not written by Chris Carter.
So I've got, in my top 5, I've got 3 episodes written by Chris Carter. And obviously story elements by David Duchovny or whatever. But yeah, I've got 3 out of my top 5 episodes that are written by this person who wrote.
But you love mythology, so that makes sense.
I think the thing is, like, you could have a bottom 5 episodes that would also feature 3 Chris Carter. That's the really interesting thing about it. Like, because like I wouldn't put Babylon down there, but a lot of people would. A lot of people would put this down there. What else is like really bad from him?
I'm just I know we're going off on tangent here, but I'm just trying to find out where Babylon falls in my list. I'm not quite sure where that is. It's 168th.
Oh, Space obviously is Chris Carter's script, isn't it? A lot of people would put that down low.
That's down, yeah. 168th is where Babylon is for me. At the moment, obviously, it might not be quite right, that, but Space is 199th. So bottom 20. Anyway, let's... have we had enough of me and Sarah versus Carl? Should we? I think the main thing to take away from this, we all think it's a poor episode. It's a really bad episode. It is in the bottom tier of, of the X-Files. It's unfortunate. It's very interesting to dissect it because there's so much going on in it. I think. It would have been nice to have some. I think, Carl, you're right. That it does seem there's a lot of episodes that don't go into too much depth, and Mulder and Scully are just there rather than actually asking the pertinent questions. Yeah. And this one's exactly the same.
Yeah, there wasn't much of them, was there, really? Because it seemed like Kathy Griffin got a lot of screen time. I imagine if we tallied up the screen time, Mulder and Scully wouldn't actually be in that one all that much. I mean, Mulder spends 7 or 8 minutes of screen time underneath that storm drain.
Yeah. It's like
what is he doing down
there? Interstellar for every minute that he's down there, it's 7 years. Yeah. I mean, spending time in the sewer in Kansas, He
didn't get abducted. He just got sucked into the sewer. It's fine.
Okay, let's go and jump into the mailbag where I think everyone will say this is Chris Carter's epitome of an episode, and it's the most classic thing he's ever written. Let's go and do that now. We'll start with Mr. Tony Black. Mr. Tony Black has a long, profound comment here. I went to write a long, profound treatise on the critical problems of Fight Club, but let me generally summarize my thoughts more succinctly as this. It's an absolute steaming pile of shite.
There are a few comments like this when people, it's good fun.
Michael Little, I like Chris Carter. I like his style. I like his fascination with evil. I have been a fan of his since 1995. He has written some damn fine episodes like Darkness Falls, Erlenmeyer Flasco, and Anasazi. Unfortunately, he throws a grotesque tantrum at Duchovny, Anderson, and at times annoying fan base. Highly unprofessional, albeit fascinating in the wrong ways. Fight Club is painfully unfunny and deadly dull in a season of full and underwhelming episodes. Bad decisions and general malaise. This is one of the worst X-Files ever. Easily the worst script ever written by Carter. He's really seething contempt for the audience here. You can feel the behind-the-scenes toxicity manifesting itself in every scene. Insultingly bad. Now that's quite, there's a lot
Scathing.
of scathing comments.
Scathing, yes.
I wouldn't go that far. I don't think the contempt isn't there for me. I don't see that. I think we've discussed this before during this recording that there seems to be time constraints. He's over egging himself on writing other stuff. That we maybe have money concerns. But what do you think generally, Carl, to those comments that he's made there?
I just wonder, maybe Michael can get back in touch with us and let us know what he means about the fan base thing, because I didn't really get that from the episode. I feel more like, and I could be wrong, but I feel more like this made perfect sense in Chris Carter's head, and just didn't translate, or maybe not perfect sense, but it interested him when he was writing the episode, and something went wrong between page and screen.
Lost in translation.
Maybe, or whatever. So I didn't really think of it as a fan base, as a dig at the fans. Did either of you pick up on that?
No,
I didn't see that. As I say, my reading, as I say from before, was more the case of the fact that they're very two alike people. That they just didn't really have that. Lost in translation is probably the best way of putting it, Sarah. Actually, that it just seemed like they weren't on the same page at the same time, and and the court case became of it. So an interesting one. So Michael, feel free to get back in touch and let us know what you mean by that, because that's an interesting comment there. Denise Weaver, I hated that episode, to be honest. I never could make it through the whole thing. Stupid, super stupid, and I detest Kathy Griffin. Now, this is what would be now known as the common effect of the James Corden effect, I think, coming in. I don't mind James Corden. I know other people, and other people will be listening to this. Tony Black will completely disagree with me, and I know that somebody on here has a more nuanced approach. So, Carl,
it's not that I hate James Corden. I actually think James Corden is a very talented guy. I think the series Gavin and Stacey, I think he wrote that and was in it, and I thought that was really good. I think it's just that the really good stuff he's done seems to be receding into the past, and he seems a bit overexposed. And
so from the illusion of Kathy Griffin, then, because obviously she seems to be an up and coming. Sarah mentioned about her style and the way that she's going to be a character, even in this early stage in her career, that's going to split an audience, because she's you're either going to like her or you're not going to like her. There's very few people that will be in between. So that in itself is casting someone like that in an episode like this. It's difficult to understand. Was she poached? Was she kind of like approached, or was she generally casted? That's the question, Sarah, really, isn't it?
Yeah. I don't know how it went down, but she, being already somewhat well known, you would think that they would have been aware of her personality and some of her more controversial things that she said. So I think it's appropriate casting. I think if you're gonna cast somebody that's like that, it makes sense that it's gonna be her. So yeah.
I think she's like Marmite in human form, isn't she? It's like that kind of lover or hate, I think. Because that divisiveness is true, isn't it? Like the only thing I've heard about her really in recent years was, didn't she do something? Was it like a magazine cover or something, or a photo shoot with the severed head of Donald Trump, something like that? You remember
That
that?
was much later, but yeah.
Yeah, like that's what I mean.
Yeah,
That's the
yeah,
only thing
yeah.
I remember from her, like in the last few years.
Yeah, and I think we have to say that she has been on. She's got cancer at the moment, hasn't she? She's been tweeting or putting on Instagram quite a lot. So
Yeah, that's sad.
you know, so which is you know, we wouldn't want that on anyone. But yeah, that's the only thing I've really heard about her recently. I didn't catch that Trump thing. I'll have to look that up.
A few years ago.
So
Obviously.
okay, so Nicole Wilson-Ripsom. Until season 8 aired, this had been my least favorite episode of the series. I like this one a lot more now than I used to. It's not even in my bottom 50 any longer. Funny enough, each time I watch it, I find something new about it that I like. It's not a good episode per se, but it's got some good moments. Even the somewhat low tech for the show special effects are endearing. So the rewatchability, I mean, I would say that Fight Club, for me personally, when I've gone through I used to go through the show. Like, so when I used to watch season 1, and then I'd buy the VHS and watch season 1 again. Season 2, 1 and 2. Season 3, 1, 2, and 3. Season 4, 1, 2, 3, and 4. By the time I get to this season, I mentioned this at the beginning of the season run, it's getting to the 2000s. I'm getting to my 20s now. I'm getting kind of like, you know, there's a lot more things going on. I'm at work full time and doing those. So this fell by the wayside in rewatch for me. And Fight Club isn't an episode I generally rewatched. So it's only in like recent history in the last 20 years that I've started to like sort of do little bits of rewatching and stuff like this. This is an episode I would never go to or think to go to, but she's got a point there with there is some stuff in here that if you've only watched it once or twice that you wouldn't like to go back into, Carl, really, is there? Would you say?
Do you mean like Mulder getting like sucked into the drain and stuff? Maybe I could see somebody liking that as a visual gag potentially. Yeah. That's
okay.
I mean, maybe that opening scene with Mulder and Scully in the office, I can see, like I say, for me, as it wore on, I got a bit fed up of it, but I could see somebody looking at that where Scully's trying to guess the phenomenon and stuff and finding that quite fun. Yeah. So maybe there are bits in there that are quite rewatchable.
And for me, I found that season 7, especially, that we get elements, and I know mentioned this before, but we get elements of Scully starting to like believe in the stuff and starting to like think. I never really picked that up until recently, and it's interesting watching season 7 as a whole again. Actually, there's moments right through all of the season. There's like we talked about Thief. Yeah. So we talk about Thief where there's moments like that, and this is her full board going, it's a psychic. So there's stuff, I think there is stuff to revisit here, Sarah, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely. And it is interesting because, like you said, this kind of builds up and then goes to the season 8 where she sort of like has to take Mulder's place. So it is nice that was planted ahead of time, that she knows Mulder well enough now, and we can see that on a screen.
Yeah. Kendra Vickers, by the way, says the same thing, Carl, for what you've just said. So she responds by saying, I tend to agree with you. I actually like the first scene with Mulder and Scully. So that's a perfect example, I think. Anna Brida Gomez, you know I'm a Carter apologist. I even like the episodes most people hate, like Babylon and The Struggles. This one is and I cannot stand it. The worst. Heather Ben, my least favorite of the original run. This episode makes me feel physically violent. Even the music makes me want to smack a guy. So that's the goal.
Effective then.
Yeah.
Heather, listen to me, Heather. Violence is never the answer. Please stop smacking guys.
Okay. Yeah. Andrew Levitt.
Do we want? It's fine.
Okay. Andrew Levitt, without a doubt, Fight Club is the single worst episode of the series. It makes a subpar X-Files light episode like Dreamland 1 and 2 look like masterpieces. And I would say, and I mentioned this a couple of times, Scissor G as well. Scissor G is much
better than this, isn't it?
Yeah. With kind of general same concept of like putting two people in a room. So, so I think that's interesting. On my first watch, the teaser was funny, and the implication that the FBI agents in the scene following the opening titles are Mulder and Scully are actually David and Gillian standing is funny. Beyond that, this episode has no substance and the attempted moments of humor fall flat. Katie Griffiths is the obvious Lulu and Betty is annoying enough, but the rest of the characters are two-dimensional stereotypes who are only plot devices for the overall story. The episode retreads the doppelganger storyline from Scissor G, which is far superior episode, and does it in such a weak and mundane way that it's just boring and downright appalling. Having Maud and Scully beat each other up at the end goes against everything the season has been working at conveying in the background, and it feels more like Carter having a go at his two leads because of the legal issues between them. Duchovny and Fox. An episode without compare how bad it is, and this is not what I watch the X-Files for. Fight Club is an apt name for the episode because it's something we, and I assume Carter, don't want to talk about. It's abysmal. 1 out of 10 from me. Right. So the fan base thing, I'm just thinking, because they have a go at the beginning of that scene, don't they, where it says 7 years. You know,
about it being far-fetched or something.
Yeah.
That could be what Michael's referring to, couldn't it? Yeah,
it could be, but I think that's just a joke. I don't see that, and we've seen it on +1 that he doesn't necessarily have those illusions. He just has a concept in mind.
Them being sarcastic because they're totally banging at this point, and they're just that's the way I always take it. But I'm a shipper,
sorry. What were they doing, Sarah? Sorry, what was that?
Totally banging.
Totally
they're getting it on.
They're getting on famously at this point.
Are they?
Yeah.
I don't watch the show for
that. Okay, I think there's another question we can ask from that comment though, which is, did they actually beat each other up at the end, or did they? I
didn't think they did.
Did they just get caught up in the melee with other people beating each other up, at the wrestling match and stuff?
I didn't take it that they beat each other up.
Mm-mm.
I think I had always assumed that they had, but it isn't clear, is it?
No.
I think we don't see any of that.
I thought it was just a free for all.
Yeah.
That they just got up. They were just in the middle of it all.
I mean, Scully was clearly fighting Supanik in my eyes.
Yeah.
Just like them two getting on. Come on. And Supanik failed miserably because Scully won. Yeah, Mark O'Brien, I didn't mind it. Pretty humorous and enjoyed the double concept. Love more to watching the wrestling. A happy episode before the cataclysmic finale. And James, I can't pronounce the next name, driver. I do apologize. I have no idea, and I don't want to even try to do that. I apologize.
Come on, give it a go. As a podcaster, you're obliged to give it a go.
Yuli's a glue driver.
Oh, I shouldn't have bothered.
Yeah, I shouldn't have bothered. I apologize. I'm so sorry. I'll buy you a beer. Some episodes I dislike from the series tend to get better with age. I am able to appreciate that which I didn't like at a younger, more innocent age. That same can be said about episodes I loved, depreciating with age, but Fight Club just gets worse. I usually skip on the rewatch, but decided I would give it a go. And again, it has been so many years since I've last seen it. I think I have only sat through this twice in my lifetime. 3 is not the magic number. If anything, I didn't realize just how bloody awful it is. I am curious as to whether it's worse than Babylon. When I get to it, an episode I've only watched once. Fight Club is the equivalent of one of those people that appears on reality TV that describes themselves as mad. Ooh, I'm a bit mad, me. People think I'm wacky and crazy. You're not. You're just annoying.
Wow. I like that.
So y'all don't watch Ted Lasso, but that makes me think of Jamie Tart on... He's kind of like that. He's that football player. Sorry. Yeah.
Okay.
I haven't seen it yet because I don't have Apple TV.
By Ted Lasso people are going to know what I mean.
Yeah.
Shout out to all the Ted Lasso people.
Just Sarah and Cortlan.
One of the women actresses was on the Rang Narration on BBC the other day.
Oh, was
and
she?
it was like, yeah, and I was like, I don't know who that is, and then started to mention Ted Lasso. I went, right,
cool.
Okay. Anyway, so that calls the episode to a close. We've done Fight Club, people. We've done it. We've spent an hour and 22 minutes talking about it.
The only way is up.
The only way is up. Are you quite sure?
Well, I think we got a couple of belters to end season 7. So,
well, season 7 definitely, yes.
And then beginning of season 8, I think is strong. So it's a while, I think, until we're plumbing these depths again.
I would absolutely agree with that as someone who loves season 8. Any final thoughts? And if not, Carl, where can people find you on that there internet?
I don't really have any final thoughts. I think I've made it abundantly clear that I don't like this episode. I don't want to labour the point any further. People can find me out on Twitter at CKJ Sweeney. In the X-Files basement.
Okay, also, I hope we could find you in the X-Fest basement. That'd be great.
Yeah.
We just need to have an X-Fest.
Yeah. X-Fest 3 hopefully will happen in the future. In England would be nice as well. Where else am I? Me and Sarah doing the Instagram stuff, aren't we, Sarah? And
yeah, we are.
Yep,
Xcast Pod, Instagram, do it.
Yep.
Get on there.
Those are the main places for me at the minute.
And Sarah?
Yes, you can find me on Twitter at Sarah L. Blair. You can find me on Instagram at author.sarah.blair and on the Xcast Instagram. And read my book, guys. It's called Air in Darkness. It's out.
And read the
Yay.
first book.
Yeah, you
as
got to
well.
read the first one because the second one starts with a big spoiler. So you got to read
So
it.
word on the grapevine is that Kurt and I have been immortalized in this book.
It is. Yes. Yeah, you guys are in it. And so's Tony. Tony
know.
is in there.
He's-
He actually plays a
Yeah, I've just remembered what you said he plays.
yeah.
Corden-esque, James Corden-esque figure.
Yeah, I immortalized him in my book as a James Corden
Right,
wannabe.
I can guarantee that when we were talking about James Corden earlier, Tony would have been screaming. He's probably listening to some public transport or something, just like screaming at his listening device.
Let it be known I got permission
Yeah.
to do that, so he knows. But yeah,
Excellent.
it's fun.
Fantastic. Should we go for a pint now, people? Should we go for a
Let's do
drink?
it.
Let's go and do
Cheers.
that. Yeah, so you can find me on Twitter at rmuldrake, RMULDRAKE. Find me. We're doing at time of recording. I think this will go out after November. Did it go out after November? Yeah. So at time of recording, me and Carl are going to Birmingham to talk about the X-Files and to talk about Millennium. So we'll be in person again after a couple of years. So that'll be fantastic.
And with Tony as well. Yep.
And with Tony. So we're going to have a great time doing that, hopefully, unless something goes magically wrong. And hopefully no fights will occur, which would be great. And so you can find me on The Time Is Now at The Time Is Now Pod. And you can also find me on the Red Dwarf podcast, Shipwrecked and Comatose at Red Dwarf Pod, and Jean-Luc Podard at Jean-Luc Podard, which is the Twitter account for the Make It So podcast. And currently running Really Going and Star Trek, the Prodigy podcast that we're looking at as well, and Really Going. But Star Trek Picard will be coming back in early next year, so we'll be doing stuff on there. Also, this is not all we're talking about on the We Made This Podcast network. There's plenty of other things happening. Obviously, I've named a couple myself, but there's more, and you'll hear some of that at the end of this. But until next time, remember, everyone, trust no one.
Elsewhere on We Made This.
Shipwrecked and Comatose, a Red Dwarf podcast.
So you know how you were both talking about the attractive women and how you spotted a particular one that you liked, etc., etc. Would you like to know what I put in my notes?
Go on then.
Yeah.
Love the Cuban heels.
They're very nice heels, and the fact he mentions in the behind the scenes later on there, was it a size too small?
Yes.
Yeah.
That
Totally worth it for Cuban heels. For me,
Yeah.
I'm 6'1", which is ever so slightly above average. If I get a pair of Cubans, I'm 6'3", and I look like a god.
Yeah.
I love Cuban heels.
Pick a disc.
The steps formula at that time was play things. If there's another verse, the fail get it. If they want a little bridge or something like that, they might give it to H or Lisa possibly. But all the hook and everything else would have been played.
Yeah, exactly. I think what I noticed as well, I think Lisa has a lot more kind of solo stuff or solo verses in this album, I think, from what I remember. As well. So the balance is slowly getting more into things. I mean, but it's something that usually happens in all kind of girl/boy groups.
Frame to frame.
My first trip to the cinema to see a Bond film was Die Another Day.
The first one I saw in the cinema was The World's Not Enough. I tried to get into Tomorrow Never Dies. I was just too young, and we got rumbled in the queue, and I was absolutely devastated. She went, "Oh, are you 12 years old?" There was a woman in the queue. I thought, I can't remember if it was the woman behind the box office or not. She basically did like a kind of MI6 job on me and scammed me. And oh, you're not getting in.
It doesn't sound like it took a lot of interrogation. There was no one
exactly,
holding a rope with knots in it to you.
Exactly. We know how long I'd last in the field.
Are you 12 years old? No. Yes, I am. It's like the stoning in Life of Brian.
He said, "I'm sorry, I thought we'd started."
Check out all of these shows and more on the We Made This podcast network. The Xcast and X-Files podcast was created by Tony Black and is produced and hosted by Carl Sweeney, Sarah Blair and Kurt North.
You can find the podcast on Twitter at the X_cast, on Facebook by typing in the Xcast, and in our group, X-Files Basement, the Xcast podcast fan group, and on Instagram at the Xcast pod.
Don't forget, you can support the show by becoming a member on Patreon. Our patrons get early access to episodes, behind-the-scenes chats with our hosts and a thriving community of X-Files, and other premium interviews and specials. To find out more and subscribe, you can go to patreon.com/thexcast. That's patreon.com/thexcast.
We are also part of the We Made This podcast network, full of popular culture shows, including our Millennium series, The Time Is Now. You can find all of our shows at our website, wemadethispod.com, or via Twitter at wemadethispod.
Thanks for listening and keep watching the skies.